joining another episode of Data Dialogues. Today we are talking about data, and not just any data, big data, massive data. So we've heard the numbers, and it's really pretty mind-blowing. I mean, data has just grown enormously, really just in recent years, and we're going to share some pretty interesting statistics. So let's talk about a little bit how data is growing, but what does this mean for you as a brand and you as a marketer? And why is quality data, not just quantity, everything? So with that, my name is Larissa Beggood, and I am the head of marketing at Porch Group Media. Joining me today is Kristen Jones and Michelle Taves. So welcome, Kristen and Michelle.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So to start off, I love, this is almost, you can't even put it into context, but 328.77 million terabytes of data are created each day. So that's equivalent to more than 3.7 million terabytes every second. I honestly don't even know how many zeros that might be, but I think millions of terabytes means a lot of data.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, and then and this other stat shows that 90% of the world's data was just created in the last 2 years alone. So think of everything that we've experienced, not just the ramp up of social media, but AI. AI is producing massive amounts of data. And Kristen, do you want to share? I know you had found some other great stats. You had found like something about every minute all the data that we produce.
Oh yeah, so like every minute we generate 500 hours of YouTube videos, 16 million texts. I kind of feel like that number should be bigger. Over 5 million Google searches. Yeah, just absolutely a huge volume of data that we produce.
Yeah, that's interesting because the source was from Domo, and 16 million texts. I mean, that might have been a stat from last year. That could be double by now, or, you're right. That could be, seems like it would be much larger than that.
It does.
So Michelle, I love this next stat that we were chatting about. Can you share this one about
about the amount of content? Yeah, the average person scrolls through 600 feet of content on their phone each day. To me, that's just almost a little sad, right? When you think of the amount of time that people are spending on their phone devices. But when you really think about it as feet, right? It's just a massive amount of information. Also, it only takes 13 milliseconds for your brain to process an image. That is why we see in today's digital sphere pictures and imagery just really capturing so many people's attention. I think that you can digest what a picture is telling you much quicker than actually reading the words. And then 80% of data is unstructured. That's really interesting because I know that us, along with a lot of other companies, are out there trying to figure out how do we take that unstructured data and make it into something meaningful that we can use to be able to, create better targeting, be able to understand our consumer mix, be able to predict, right, in market interest, all of those type of activities that good data companies are out there doing. But it's just a massive project to be working on, for sure.
That's interesting too about the image processing, and how I think that, and you and I had a chat about this, but today there's so much written text. So I remember when I first started in content marketing, it was all about the written blogs. Video content it has really, really ramped up, in recent, well, not so recent years, maybe like last 5 years or so. There's just an explosion of more video. And I think that kind of shows like how, and you had actually mentioned this, how like brains are actually evolving. It's just easier with so much data today, it's almost easier to understand an image more quickly than it is to read through something.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were chatting about was since I'm in charge of a few companies, right? You could probably imagine the amount of solicitors or service providers I hear from on a daily basis. Many of them, when they send me a really long email, right? I don't even read it. Maybe I'll take a look at the first two sentences. If I'm not interested, I go on. Where I actually had somebody send me a video of themselves talking to me about their product and seeing if I would be interested. I actually watched the video. I was far more interested in watching the video than reading miles and miles, worth of text. And I think that probably says a little bit about why Instagram is doing well and why TikTok is doing well and why other platforms like X, right, are starting to slow down and lose a little bit of their subscribers because they're so text heavy, right, compared to some of the other social media platforms that are really digital. Even if you look at Facebook, everybody has a video reel now, right? Where before that just wasn't part of the platform. And so you definitely see video and imagery being used so much more than the written text.
So, Kristen, you had our content strategy here at PGM, and I know that you have really focused on more video, this podcast channel, and just even with some of our emails, you've really, really shortened them. I'd love to hear kind of how you've been, some of the different things that you've been doing along the lines of video and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been leveraging short form video content on YouTube and LinkedIn to get some of our messaging out there. We find that using short form video on YouTube and LinkedIn is definitely something that we will continue to do. And yeah.
One of the things too,
well, and I think for one of the go ahead, Larissa. I was just going to say, I think one of the first things that we've done, and Larissa, under you and Kristen, right, is we've actually hired someone who is a digital marketer who really specializes in creating videos, being able to do more of this digital marketing. I wonder how many other companies are starting to change to that. From like the written blogs is still interesting and something you should do, but really kind of adding in a digital, methodology to what you're trying to do, I think is going to become more and more prominent over the next couple of years.
Oh, so agree. It's, I think too, it's kind of like this whole backlash to AI, and there's so much written content now. People can write a blog in a matter of minutes, versus, hours in the past. I mean, they still need to add a little bit of a human element to it, but there's just a lot of really trash content out there that we're trying to battle with. And in order to cut through that clutter, you have to reach out with something like a personalized video or something humorous, something with a human element. And a lot of times, the quickest, fastest way to communicate that is through imagery and video and so forth. So I think this next stat was pretty fascinating. So an article in The Atlantic highlighted that individuals are statistically more likely to survive a plane crash than to click on a banner ad. That's so sad.
Oh, man. I did not know that. That is really interesting. Yeah. I don't know anybody that has survived a plane crash, so it's really hard. That is a very low percentage.
Yeah, I don't know if this is actually true, but I did include that because I thought it was pretty humorous, just to showcase what people really think of banner advertising. And again, that's like all that clutter. If it's not a personalized ad or something that's intriguing, people are just going to, bypass it. So it's not even just the written content anymore. It's all this advertising. I know my daughter, she's 24, and for her, she doesn't look at ads. She doesn't really trust ads. She's more about influencers on Instagram or word of mouth recommendations. So with so much data, just because we can target faster means, you know, you really have to use the right data, you know, with this data explosion to target better. So it's not just about grabbing all this data that's available to us and just throwing out, you know, ad after ad after ad. It's really stitching together all these different data points on individual consumers, to maybe create a really cool little video clip or to put together a personalized video. So just because that, you know, again, that there's been a data explosion and there's a lot of data that we can use, doesn't mean that we should be using all of it.
Yep, I think the next one is interesting, Larissa. A person spends about 6 months of their life waiting for websites to load. I can believe that. Like when you add it all together, right? How many times it is to like get to the right website, let it load, let it circle that. The what is it called? The circle, right? Of the loading tracker, whatever that is called.
The evolving circle.
The evolving circle. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy, you know, but 6 months of your life waiting for that to load. I can believe that. That's one I can believe.
So I don't know if you ever did this, Kristen, but I'm sure Michelle remembers dialing up with a modem and, you know, the modem sound of it dialing in and waiting for it to boot. And then the website will come in like little by little by little by little. I'm very happy that we have faster internet speeds today because that was something else.
Oh, yes. I do remember actually because I grew up in the 90s, so there was still dial-up then, and it was always like, I need to use the phone, get off the computer.
Yeah.
Didn't use them at the same time, or you could, but my parents just didn't want to pay for that. So
I forgot about that. Yes, I forgot. They both use the phone line. So love to tie this all back to brands. You know, we did touch a little bit about, you know, with so much data, but I think that again, more data does equal more opportunity, but it also means more complexity. What are some of your thoughts here, Michelle, on how brands can kind of navigate this big data landscape?
For sure. I think that we often have the conversation of, because we are a data company, we want as much data as we can get, right? So that we can make really actionable and intelligent decisions. However, there's some data that is worth more than others, right? We are all about intent data, really trying to target the right person, the right place at the right channel. And so for us, that's really what we concentrate on, right? To be able to make that marketing message. And so we will accumulate data and use it to be able to drive intelligence, but not all data is equal in my mind, for sure. Also, timing is really important, right? Being able to understand what somebody did maybe a year ago or 2 years ago isn't as interesting as understanding what they did last week. And for us, first party data is gold, right? We just really want to be able to know more and more about the consumer. And we know that when a consumer is supplying that data themselves, like your example, Larissa, the birthday, right? We just know that we can count on that and that we can make them a relevant message based on that first party data that they're able to share and that we're able to use for targeting.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's using the right data, and to your point, with some of it just being more valuable than others, it's collecting the right data for the right message and at the right time. And I think that's really what this data explosion is about, is navigating in a way that makes the most sense to be the most targeted at the most accurate time. Throw another most in there.
I like how you said navigate, though. I really like how you said navigate, because at the beginning we were talking about, right, terabytes worth of information every single day. And so if you could just imagine what that technology needs to look like to be able to navigate, right, through all of that terabytes of information, to really be able to get to the one thing that you really care about at that time, right? Whether it is a life event that, hey, this person is moving, or a life of graduations are coming up soon, right? whatever that life event is, of being able to then create that, navigate yourself right into the sweet spot, you know, of that targeting message that you want to be able to make for the customer.
So, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking, you know, we're not quite in the age of the Jetsons. If any of you happen to remember, the Jetsons was a cartoon that I was obsessed with being, having a flying car. Well, we might have some of those now, but it's not a regular thing. So there's been a lot of explosion in data and technology. Maybe in a couple of years, we'll do another podcast from our flying cars, but stay tuned.
So Larissa, sidebar on the Jetsons. I just got to go here. So it's interesting. If you look at the Jetsons, I also was a Jetsons fan. If you look at the cartoons, 80% of the tech that they had in the cartoon like 20, 25 years ago is relevant today. So they actually had an iPhone was one of the techs. And it beamed and you could talk to it and all this other kind of things. It had a Peloton in the Jetsons. It had, like, you've got to go back and check it out. It's actually quite cool and quite funny about how they were able to, there was microwaves in the Jetsons before microwaves ever existed. So it's just really quite fun to go check it out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that is your homework, all. You know, thank you. Finish listening to the podcast, and then go tune into the Jetsons and enjoy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us. We will chat with you all soon. Take care.